Sha'elah Haba'ah.
Next
Uh,
question.
so Sharon on Facebook asked, "What's your take on the two powers in heaven as seen in the writings of Daniel?"
All
I
right,
asked
so
a rabbi. Do you want me to
go ahead.
finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
I asked a rabbi this question recently because I was curious to know if he was familiar with the scholarship on this point and what he thought about it. I first learned about the two powers from reading Jewish scholar Daniel Boyarin, something like that. But it's been treated by Christian scholars as well.
Okay, so
That's it.
in rabbinic literature, two powers refers to idolatry, to an idolatry of the mind, which often eventually manifests as idolatry that's tangible that you actually see. And we see that in segments of Christianity, not all of Christianity. And so it's deriving from a passage in the book of Daniel where Daniel has a vision and he sees two entities in his vision, the Ancient of Days and then a Son of Man. And first, we should point out that regardless of who the Son of Man is or isn't, the fact that it says Son of Man means that it's mortal, not divine. The expression Son of Man is as clear as you can be in Hebrew to say not divine. This can be lost in translation because oftentimes where the Hebrew says Son of Man, it will just be translated as a man or a person or a human. And that's because this term Son of Man is used copiously in Hebrew very frequently. And it's just that in Christianity, they mostly know this expression in connection to Jesus or in connection to this passage in Daniel, because that's the only place it's getting translated as Son of Man. And all the other places, the translators are translating it as human or person. But in the original language, it's the same exact term. There are translations that are more consistent and will consistently translate it as Son of Man. I think, like in the book of Ezekiel, some translations will be careful to translate it as Son of Man. Not all. But first, know that this is a normal Hebrew expression that just means mortal, not God. It's literally the antonym of divine. So from the get-go, it's ridiculous. But let's go with it because I know it's so ingrained in most Christians as a sort of like a messianic term. Excuse me, when in reality it's a Hebrew term that is not unique to references to the Messiah, but it's just a Hebrew term that means human being. It's used all the time, both in the Bible and in modern Hebrew, all the time. So let's look this up. Whoever wants to read, say Tur Sheli, turn of mine. Tur Sheli.
Ursheli. As I looked on, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His garment was like white snow, and the hair of his head was like lamb's wool. His throne was tongues of flame. Its wheels were blazing fire. So now I'm picturing as I read that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, as
yeah,
long as you're not worshiping whatever image comes to your mind, it's okay.
yeah.
All right. So let's first look at this. The the throne is tongues of flame. The wheels are blazing fire. This is obviously metaphor, first of all, which we should already know because because all of this is in the context of a vision. The whole thing is in the context of a vision. It's not literal, first and foremost. And we should already know because we believe in the Torah, right? God says in the Torah, what? Who would like to read?
Shali. And God said, "Hear these my words. When prophets of Adonai arise among you, I make myself known to them in a vision. I speak with them in a dream."
Okay, let's keep going.
Not so with my servant Moses. He is trusted throughout my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles, and he beholds the likeness of Adonai. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses?
Okay. So there's a lot that you could unpack from these two passages, but what I really want to focus on is that God himself, this is not rabbinic commentary, juxtaposes, contrasts how he reveals himself to humanity through other prophets, in contrast to how he reveals himself through Moses. With regard to other prophets, unlike Moses, who he speaks mouth to mouth, most, possibly all Christian translations translate this as face to face, but the Hebrew is literally mouth to mouth. It's as if Moses becomes the mouthpiece of God, speaking directly. Whereas other prophets, God does speak to them, but it's not mouth to mouth. It's not like a literal mouthpiece, but rather God speaks to us through other prophets by making himself known to them through visions and with dreams and with riddles, with metaphors, okay, not plainly. With Moses, it's the opposite. It's plain and not with riddles, right? But with other prophets, it's through metaphors. And then the prophet will be given the interpretation of the metaphor. But the interpretation is coming from a metaphor, something that's not literal. So it is a mistake to take the metaphor literally. That's why you need an interpretation. So let's go back and look at Daniel again. He has this vision. It clearly says it's a vision. And here, this is the verb for a vision. Hazeh is the verb. No, 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 no. Literally, it's saying there was a vision, right? So, and in Hebrew, this is Aramaic, by the way. In Hebrew, it's hazon with the het. That's the word for vision. It does not refer to something tangible and literal. Let's keep reading. So he had his vision. If you want to go ahead, you can read it one more time. Let's have someone read through the verses so we get a full picture. But remember, according to the Torah, God does not speak to the prophets other than Moses in a direct mouth-to-mouth way, but rather through visions with metaphors. And we also see here in Hosea, chapter 12, verse 11, I speak to the prophets with visions, and I increase by the hands of the prophets metaphor. So I am metaphorized. I am allegorized. Here they say I spoke with prophets, but it's literally I shall allegorize, right? I shall metaphorize. Right? This is such a basic thing. It should always be in the forefront of your mind as you're reading the prophets. All right, Heather, would you like to read? Read through. I'll scroll as you go.
As I looked on, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His garments was like white snow, and the hair of his head was like lamb's wool. His throne was tongues of flame, its wheels were blazing fire. A river of fire streamed forth before him. Thousands upon thousands served him. Myriads upon myriads attended him. The court sat, and the books were opened. I looked on, then, because of the arrogant words that the horn spoke. The beast was killed as I looked on. Its body was destroyed, and it was consigned to the flames. The dominion of the other beast was taken away, but an extension of life was given to them for a time and a season. As I looked on in the night vision, one
Right,
like
it's
a human
clearly a vision again. Clearly it's a vision, i.e. a dream, a night vision. Go ahead.
One like a human being came with the clouds of heaven. He reached the Ancient of Days and was presented to him. Dominion, glory, and kingship were given to him. All peoples and nations of every language must serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship one that shall not be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was disturbed within me, and the vision of my mind alarmed me. I approached one of the attendants and asked him the true meaning of all this. He
Okay,
gave me this
go ahead.
he
Sorry.
gave me this interpretation of the matter.
right? So Daniel didn't look at this and say, "Oh, this is obvious what this means. Obviously, there's two powers in heaven, and I need to be worshiping them because they're both God." Come on. No, he knew this was odd. This is weird. What does it mean? He's getting the interpretation from one of the, uh, for lack of a better word, divine uh, agents, one of the messengers, one of the angels. When I say divine agent, I don't mean that it is God, to be clear. So
These
he's
great
getting an interpretation. He's not just getting it from a commentary from the Darby Bible. He's not getting it from the Talmud either. He's getting this from one of the uh, entities in this experience. Right? They're interpreting it for him directly. Go ahead.
these great beasts, four in number, mean four kingdoms will arise out of the earth.
It's a metaphor. Surprise, surprise. They're not literally beasts, they're kingdoms. Let's keep going.
Then the holy ones of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess the kingdom forever, forever and ever.
Oh, but who, the holy ones, well, that's plural. And this is not referring to the Most High, but it's plural, something other than the Most High. You don't have to be a genius to know that this is a reference to the servants of God, the Almighty, his people, Israel, the righteous of Israel. Okay. Now let's look. Remember, this is an interpretation of the vision. So what is this parallel to? The beasts we know are parallel to kingdoms. So who are these holy ones who receive the kingdom? Okay, let's go back. What is that referring to in the vision? Where is where is one who is different from the others, who is given kingship?
And
Let's read it again. Where is that parallel? This is an interpretation of this vision. Where is someone being given kingship? Let's keep reading.
As I looked on in the night vision, one like a human being came with the clouds of heaven. He reached the Ancient of Days and was presented to him. Dominion, glory, and kingship were given to him. All peoples and nations of every language must serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship one that shall not be destroyed.
Okay, so that's it. Where are the holy ones, plural? Okay, holy ones of the Most High receive the kingdom and will possess, who will possess? They, plural, will possess the kingdom forever. Where are they? Here. I don't want to tell you. I want someone to tell me. Where are these plural people mentioned in the vision?
One like a human being.
Yes. There's nothing else that it could be. And it says explicitly, just as it says in the interpretation, that they receive, i.e., they were given kingship, they were given the kingdom, and they will possess it forever. All right, and the plural suffix is clearly indicated in the Aramaic, right? So in the same way that in the authoritative interpretation given to Daniel, it is not an individual who's given kingship, but it's plural, the holy ones of the Most High. So in the vision, the only thing that could be parallel to is the human being or the one like a human being, and we'll explain why it says like, right? So the only one here that's given that could be possibly parallel to the holy ones being given kingship is the one like a human being, that is the Son of Man, that in the Christian translations is translated as Son of Man, right? And it is given dominion, glory, and kingship. This is the kingdom of Israel. This is the people of Israel. That's why it says like a human being, because the people of Israel as a nation is not a human being, but the people of Israel is frequently throughout the prophets. Uh, how do I say this? Is frequently symbolized as a human being, like one man. Many times it's referred to and described as if it is one man. In the book of Isaiah, many times it refers to my servant. God elaborates, expounds upon his servant, spoken in the singular. And then he says, Israel, that they are Israel. typically is understood as being the righteous of Israel, ideal Israel, but it's Israel. Many times in the book of Exodus, just a few Torah portions ago, God referred to the people of Israel as my firstborn, again, symbolized as one human. That's why it says like, because it's not literally one human, but it's a human. And it's the only parallel in the vision that in the interpretation is the holy ones of the Most High. Now, this isn't just in the book of Daniel, it's in several other places in the prophets where God says that the nations will serve the people of Israel. Okay, let's look up some of these. So go to Tanakh. Hmm. Let's go to Isaiah 49, verse 22. Victor, would you like to read? We're looking for the nations serving the people of Israel. Now, some Christian translations here in Daniel will translate instead of serve, they will say worship. Again, that's misleading, right? Unless you think that Jacob was worshiping Esau, unless you think that here in Isaiah chapter 49, the nations are worshiping the people of Israel, then you should not be translating it as worship in Daniel chapter 7 is the same term. That there is no, that people know this, there is no Hebrew parallel to the English word worship that has the connotation of worship that it exists in modern colloquial English. In modern colloquial English, the term worship means to attribute divinity, to believe it is divine or God. And the historical usage of the word worship in English did not mean that, but that is what it means now in popular usage. And what I'm saying is the term translated as serve and often translated as worship in Christian translations, the underlying original word does not carry that connotation. It can refer to serving the creator, but the word itself does not mean worship as the word worship is used in modern English. All right, let's go ahead.
That the word avoda?
Yeah, avodah is the noun
Avoda.
form, service. La
Hmm.
avod is to serve. Go ahead.
Thus said my servant
My sovereign,
God.
my sovereign.
Thank you. That would be a little odd, wouldn't it? Thus
Yeah.
said my sovereign God, I will raise my hand to nations and lift up my
Ensign.
ensign to peoples, and they shall bring your sons in their bosoms and carry your daughters on their backs. Kings shall tend your children, their queens shall serve you as nurses. They shall bow to you face to the ground and lick the dust of your feet, and you shall know that I am God. Those who trust in me shall not be shamed.
All right. We could keep going, but that's clear enough.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. There are several other places. Feel free to look those up in your spare time, but that, in short, is the answer. Now,
I
can
think there
go
might
ahead.
be actual people that look at this and that actually think they will be worshipped someday by the nations, by the
No, not in the Orthodox world.
no,
Not
no,
in
no. I mean Christian world.
You have perhaps in the Black Hebrew Israelite world, and they believe, and not to be mistaken for actual Black Israelites, there are real
Yeah.
Black Israelites, but they don't usually go around saying we are the Black Hebrew Israelites. Black Jews and Black Israelites or legitimate Israelites do
Hmm.
not make the color of their skin a significant aspect of their identity, just as white Jews who do exist that people of Israel as a nation are not white or black, but there are individuals. No kosher Israelite makes the skin tone a fundamental aspect of their Jewish or Israelite identity. But there are certain uh, cults that have sprung up, racist cults that make their skin color like a huge part of their religious identity. And they are replacement theologist groups, and they believe that God is black. They believe that anyone who is not black or not colored will eventually be enslaved and should be enslaved and will worship them. And they use this to bring that idea, though in classical Torah Judaism, to be a servant of Israel does not mean you actually worship Israel. It means you serve us in the sense that the same way that we would serve a king of Israel, not that we worship him, but that we partner with them and we submit to their uh, oversight of how we should be serving God by partnering with them. But to be a servant of Israel, by definition, in classical Judaism means you are no longer one of the pagan nations, but that you have joined the people of Israel, you've partnered with Israel. All right, so, what were you asking about?
Mm.
I lost
Well, you brought up that God, they believe God was black, but I
you. Yeah,
would
so there
say
are
that
people, yeah, you had
God,
mentioned,
I wouldn't say God is white
of course
because
not. God is
I'm not
not any
supposed to
color.
see. I'm not, yeah, right.
It's not just that
There's
we
no,
can't see him, the entire concept is
well,
inapplicable. It's just
right.
absurd. It's
Well,
absurd.
it's giving me an image as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for
If
to
you're getting
demand
a
that,
if you're
yeah.
giving a describable image of God, it's not
Mm,
God. It might
right.
symbolize God, but you should know that the symbol of God is not God. When we write Yud He Wah He, YHWH, on a piece of paper, that does point to God. It's a reference to God, but the writing itself is not God. Heaven forbid. Right? No different when Daniel has a vision of the Ancient of Days. But Daniel knows, unlike other people, Daniel knows that the vision of the Ancient of Days is not literally the one that is symbolizing. It's just a reference, a symbolic reference, right? If God sat on a throne of flames, as it describes, he would fall through it. Right? Flames can't support something. It's all a figure of speech. Uh, yeah, that was just an expounding on your idea that there are some people who say Israel will actually be worshipped, but those are not actual Jews. Those are cults that sprung up with mostly with racist agendas. They're not even trying to understand the Bible as it actually is written.
Mm.
All right, so I think we've covered this. Now, the human being or the one like a human being, it's a reference to the people of Israel. Of course, that includes legitimate messiahs, whoever they be, whenever they be, because if it's referring to the people of Israel, that includes our leadership, but it's not an exclusive reference to a messiah, and it absolutely does not mean that there is more than one divinity or worshipful entities in the heavens. God forbid. You know, they also see in visions other angels, other angelic beings. Please don't tell me that you worship them as well just because they're in the heavens. This is a great, great mistake, a horrible mistake, and it has no basis in the Bible. And the only way it could be somehow derived here is by reading into the text something that's not there and completely ignoring the authoritative interpretation that Daniel was given. Right? So that's that. Sha'elah haba'ah. If anybody has any questions about that specifically before we move on, go right ahead. You know, also, if you want to juxtapose, not juxtapose, if you want to contrast uh, the one like a human being who is symbolizing the people of Israel, often symbolized as a human being in figurative prophetic writings, if you want to say that this is referring to the Messiah, well, then you're saying that the Messiah, who you believe is God, is not the Ancient of Days. That doesn't work with Christianity. Christianity believes that the Messiah is also the Ancient of Days. It is not only the Father who is called the Ancient of Days in establishment Christianity's view of the Trinity, but all three persons of the Trinity are Ancient of Days. So in, in the vision, the one who approaches the Ancient of Days, so is that Jesus approaching Jesus? If Jesus is the image of the unseen God, then the Ancient of Days would be Jesus, Hashem Yishmor, God forbid, but it would be the Ancient of Days who is Jesus, who is the anthropomorphization of God, the Father who is the invisible God. And then you still have to ask, who is the Son of Man? It just doesn't work. Any questions? Do you guys understand what I'm saying there? Yeah, so you still have to ask the question. Unless you want to say that Jesus is not the sole image of the unseen God, but also God the Father is the visible image of the unseen God. Right? But that's not even what Christianity traditionally teaches. It's just contradiction upon contradiction. Oh yeah, it just popped in my head another thing about the Daniel chapter 7 passage and the so-called two powers idea, that it says that dominion was given to that individual, right? Which we know as the people of Israel, the righteous of Israel. Oh, it's not in here. So you have to ask the question. That passage, if you think it's referring to Jesus in the context of establishment Christianity's beliefs regarding the Trinity, you have to ask the question, if Jesus was already God, then the whole earth was already his. So how was he given dominion if he already had it? Because it is the Ancient of Days who gave him that dominion, meaning the Ancient of Days already had that dominion. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. It always has been from the beginning. So that dominion is being given to one who did not yet have that dominion, right? So essentially, it's saying that whoever is receiving that dominion did not have it yet. And if Jesus were God, Hashem Yishmor, Has v'shalom, if Jesus were God and he were always God, then he would have already had that dominion. That is basically the actual meaning of the word God or Elohim in Hebrew. It is the powerful authority. So, so like, how are you being given something that you already had?